Hello and welcome to Adapod, a podcast by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. I'm your host, Emilio Garcia. Today, we talk to the Executive Director of the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, Brian Marlow, about the hit piece written about us in the Sydney Morning Herald, an embarrassing nothing burger by Deborah Snow, and we discuss why it was written and what it means. Please enjoy the episode, and please stick around after the episode to learn more about the ATA. Please enjoy. So here we are for the first time in the Australian Taxpayers Alliance mobile.
For our subscribers and listeners, there's a bunch of construction work going on inside the building. So to record our podcast, we're doing it from my car, which, funnily enough, has the best sound deadening qualities ever, better than our sound booth. So maybe we should just do all of our podcasts from my car.
Yeah, I think there's a few podcasters that do that. But today, we're not going to talk about the incredible situation that we're in. We're going to talk about this hilarious hit piece that was put out on us, on the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. It was put out in the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yes.
And essentially, it's trying to cast some kind of doubt on our funding and trying to imply that we're funded by some shady, dark money forces. But the funny thing about this is, the person who wrote this is a senior
She's a senior writer for the Sydney Morning Herald. So she's a senior writer for Sydney's objectively biggest left-wing rag.
Mm-hmm. And she did a terrible job.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lazy article, right? And our subscribers have seen this before. There was that article in the AFR that said we were funded by dark money. Well, I don't know what dark money is. Sounds cool.
Yeah.
But it's a standard thing. It's like, as the ATA is growing, as we're getting more runs on the board, as we're getting published more and more often, we've been published about 130 times this year alone across all kinds of different media channels, right, whether it's radio, print, TV. As we're getting more attention, left-wing groups and left-wing journalists are starting to sit back and go, well, this must be a nefarious conspiracy, as opposed to, no, there's a hell of a lot of Australians out there,
that's right,
who are sick of being taxed to death, who are sick of being overregulated, and who don't like the nanny state.
Yeah, and I don't think they're particularly comfortable with the fact that we're not funded by big names and people with special interest. Well, I mean, they have special interests insofar as you and I and any individual has interests within their own particular space. Yeah. But we don't have big money behind us in any particular lobbying capacity, and they don't like that because then they can't really just disqualify us.
Well, the car that we're recording from cost me $1,500.
It's a great car.
Clearly, I'm not rolling in it.
I would buy this car if I was rolling in it. It's a great car.
Yeah, okay.
It's a Swedish
This isn't the podcast where we compliment my vehicle.
Well, I mean, it saved us, so we might as well. All right. So this article starts. It starts this way. The Rightwing Australian Taxpayers Alliance is under pressure to detail the source of its funds it's deployed during this year's federal election. Okay. Under pressure by who? I haven't felt any pressure. Have you been under pressure by anyone other than this article?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously need to be careful in what we specifically say, just because part of it relates to submissions being made to Parliament.
Yeah, that's right.
And some of those submissions are considered, I think, by the Parliamentary Committee confidential at the moment. But essentially what it is there's groups out there that have made complaints because we inserted ourselves in their view, in the 2019 election, and we committed the crime of campaigning against potential tax hikes by a Bill Shorten government. Those of you who followed us for a while will remember we ran a campaign called Stop Shorten. Our objective was literally to stop Bill Shorten from becoming Prime Minister, because a Shorten government would increase taxes, would increase regulations, and would completely decimate all of the groups that we represent. So small businesses, Australian families, and people that just want to keep more of their hard-earned income. So we're really proud to be part of a concerted effort across all kinds of different groups that put a stop to a Shorten government. But we've committed a crime in the eyes of, one, the Sydney Morning Herald, and two, some of the groups that they reference in this article that say that we're some evil organisation.
Right. And we'll get to that in a second, but I also do find it funny that they describe us as the right-wing Australian Taxpayers Alliance.
Yes.
Now listen, I don't think that anyone would call us leftists or even centrists. I think that, probably most of our ideology is aligned to the centre-right or to the right wing. But really our advocacy isn't right-wing.
No.
I mean, we coordinate regularly with left-wing groups. We actually, a lot of the proposals that we're into are actually kind of rejected more by the conservative faction of politics and more embraced by the left wing. So I really find it curious that she just kind of it sneaks it in there, like the right-wing Australian Taxpayers Alliance. Like, right-wing how?
Yeah, but this is the thing. It's like the political Overton window has shifted so far to the left that anything short of give money to everyone is considered right-wing. So, we believe at the ATA in good governance, not no government.
That's right.
And in reducing burdensome regulations, in reducing individual tax rates and taxes, on small businesses and the company tax rate and all that kind of stuff. We advocate for people being able to keep more of their own money, but also removing government restrictions. We've supported the Sydney Morning Herald's campaign on, journalist integrity and all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
Which is ironic given the quality of this article. And they use the term right wing as like a smear kind of label.
Right wing. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, okay, if thinking that people should keep more of their own money makes me right wing, well then I'm damn right I'm right wing.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've discussed this before, and this is just a little parenthesis. Even if, let's say, you were sympathetic to the point of view that we should get taxed a decent amount so that we can hold up the welfare state, even I think people who think that would see the way in which your welfare dollars actually get spent and say that's ridiculous.
Yes.
Because most of it isn't going to the people who were helping. It's going to the administration to then help those people. But anyway, that's a little bit beside the case. She continues. The Alliance used an app favored by conservative lobbies in the U.S. and Britain to campaign against then Labour leader Bill Shorten in the May of 2019 election. So what she's talking about here is an app that we created called Stop Shorten.
Yep.
And the issue is that apparently this app is essentially an app creator, an app platform that can be used for a bevy of purposes. And two people that also used this platform were people who helped advocate for Donald Trump and for Brexit. But that's like saying, well, Squarespace has been, used to create websites for X, Y, and Z, and thus anyone who uses Squarespace has some kind of attachment to these groups.
It's standard leftist smearing, right? So it's like Brian Marlow who drives a vehicle, just like Idi Amin once drove a car, right? Seriously, it is like clown world logic stuff, and it makes no sense. But yes, so we used an app developed by a company called UCampaign, and the purpose of that app was to allow people that were concerned about a Bill Shorten government to share content, to receive updated information, and get real-time alerts on what was happening with our campaign. It was actually used as a beta testing phase prior to the election, so we thought, well, we'll roll the app out, we'll test it out prior to the election. Everyone under the sun pretty much assumed there was going to be a Bill Shorten government.
Right.
And we thought, well, once there's a Shorten government, we can roll this app out even further and use that to campaign against some of the most egregious potential tax hikes he might want to put in.
Thank God that didn't happen.
Thank God that didn't happen, and one mission accomplished. But also, like, we used an app, and that's our big crime.
Well, it's not even that we used an app. It's an app favored by what are you talking? It's a platform. People. It's a platform that anyone can use. What are you talking about?
Yes.
Okay. She continues. So far, it has not registered itself as a third party with the Australian Electoral Commission, despite its involvement in the campaign, and its book remained closed to the public because it is a private company. That's right. So, what's this woman's name again?
Deborah Snow.
Okay, Deborah. The reason that we don't register as a third party
is answered in your own article is because we're a private company.
Exactly. And because we're not a third party. We've never been. We've never run anyone. We're not even trying to get a seat in Parliament. That's not our wheelhouse. So
what she's trying to say is that we're a campaign arm for one political group or over another, which isn't the case, because we've attacked the Liberal Party on some of their poor taxation. We've attacked all kinds of different parties when they've done the wrong thing. What we care about is tax, regulation, and waste.
That's right.
And if any party is going to increase taxes, increase regulation, or be more wasteful with how they spend not their money, your money, we're going to call them out on that.
Yeah.
So we've called out the Nationals, we've called out the Liberals, we've called out Labor, we've called out the Greens. We're not party affiliated.
That's right.
But they're trying to smear us as party affiliated because we went after Bill Shorten.
Yeah, well, that's part of the curious thing. I mean, one of our campaigns actually is in direct opposition to one of the most prominent liberal politicians currently around. And I won't say it now. I don't think it's relevant, but I think most people who follow us know who that is. And also, they seem to think that we have some kind of affinity for tobacco. That's been the subject of other hit pieces.
Again,
we're funded by Big Tobacco. We're attacking Big Tobacco on a constant basis.
But not even that. What it is, I keep coming back to this, like, standard like leftist smearing is, well, you support an issue and someone else tangentially benefits from that issue. Right. So therefore you're supporting the people that also benefit. It's like, no, we support policies based on their merits.
Right.
Whoever benefits from those policies, I don't care about. Is the policy good, and is it a net good for the public? Yes. Then good, we support it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to jump now to another part, just because we're on the issue of tobacco and our legalized vaping campaign.
Yes.
And she talks about this. We obviously have the nation's largest pro-vaping advocacy group,
yes.
Probably one of the most important ones in the world, if I can pat my own back. And she says, this advocacy group, which wants nicotine in vaping products to become legal without a prescription, a goal shared with tobacco companies.
A goal also shared with
smokers
who don't want to smoke anymore. But like, let's just use leftist logic, right? So we're advocating for an issue, and it's a goal shared by insert group. So in her case, she's saying tobacco companies. But it's also a goal shared by Public Health England, by the New Zealand Health Ministry, by Canada's Public Health Group, by Cancer Research UK. It's supported by pretty much every country in the EU. It's supported by the Food and Drug Administration. So by her logic, we must also be supported by all of those government organisations. But it just doesn't stack up. What they're doing is, and I really want to try and drill this home, is by saying that we're just a front for all kinds of, different foreign entities and dark money and all this kind of stuff, they're delegitimizing our actual supporters.
That's right.
So what they're doing is they're delegitimizing the thousands of people that support our campaigns, the thousands of people that follow us, and all the people that care about, lower taxes, fewer regulations, and an end to the nanny state. And I know I keep coming back to that, but it's like, remember when Hillary Clinton called a bunch of Trump supporters deplorables?
Yeah.
And it was a way of delegitimizing them?
Of course.
She's not even doing that. She's pretending they don't exist.
That's right.
So she's taking away your legitimacy, which is bullshit.
No, it's ridiculous. And of course the issue is that there's this whole emphasis on, we deserve to know where this funding comes from. The issue is we actually can't release the funding the way that other groups would, because there's the issue of privacy, which I would think some left-wing newspaper would care about, because if we just release all of our sources of income, we're going to have thousands of names with thousands of amounts, because we're mostly funded by our donors.
Well, we're funded by individual donors. We're funded by, everyday Australians. So what, I'm supposed to say that, John Smith, who's, from working class background, donated $50 last week? And this is from the same organisation that's saying that journalists should be entitled to their own privacies and all that kind of stuff, which we agree with, turning around and saying, in the questions that she sent us, she was like, oh, who are your donors? And like, how much have they donated? I'm sorry, that's private information. I'm not going to hand over...
Which is a polite way to say none of your business.
But also, I'm not going to hand over private information of our thousands of donors to some random journalist because she's asked for it.
Yeah. Well, and of course, she's essentially saying, there's a line here. The public has a right to know where the funding comes from. It's like, the public has a right to know where the funding comes from for a political party. Yeah. They have the right to know the funding for...
well, they have a right to know for big dollar donations. So off the top of my head, I think anything over $13,000 or $14,000 as a lump sum donation, you have to declare.
Right.
That's fine.
So that would be out there already. And as our founder put it very well, as Tim Andrews put it, despite the wild allegation of tin-foil hat-wearing conspiracy theorists, the ATA did not receive any donations from the Koch brothers network, Big Oil, and the tobacco industry, or any foreign funding of any of our political activities.
Yeah.
Now, this is. I mean, we're taking this to the bank. This is
but what she's saying is essentially open your books.
Yeah.
So it's not enough for us to say, actually, just if you want to find out how we're supported, why don't you become a member? Mm-hmm. Donate. Become a regular member. And you'll find out how we operate.
Exactly.
No, open your books. I want to know the names of every single person that donates to your organization, because you campaigned against the guy I like. Mm-hmm. You campaigned against, big new taxes.
Right.
And you committed wrong campaign, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the issue here, we could go through this all, but as we've been talking, I've been kind of skimming through the article. There's really very little to emphasize here because it's a very bland article. As I was reading, we've had hit pieces against us before. I've looked through them, and some of the things, at least the way in which it was written, it actually it had interesting points in it. They were wrong or they were misleading or whatever, but at least it read like a hit piece. This is I don't even know how to describe this. This is like a bland description.
This is a prime example of why the Sydney Morning Herald is failing as a newspaper and is bleeding out money. Mm-hmm. It's crappy writing. It's shonky journalism. It's based off complaints made by other groups that are linked to Get Up and linked to, Greenpeace, that don't like us because we campaigned for cheaper energy options for Australians. We campaigned for lower taxes. Yep. And we campaigned against the Labor Party.
No, and clearly there's an agenda. There's clearly an agenda. There's probably a left-wing bend to that agenda because, there's another group mentioned here who is a group that has made a couple of questions about us. And this is a group that itself openly has many, many millions of dollars of funding from foreign organizations, political organizations.
They have clearly open links to foreign organizations. I think their main organization is based in England.
Right.
They list Get Up as being one of their members, Greenpeace, a whole other raft of left wing organizations.
And
so the issue is
George Soros.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the other issue is that so we've come up on their radar because the ATA is growing. So with the support of everyone who listens to our podcast and donates and everything like that, we've been slowly growing it as an organisation. So these groups are starting to go, who are these people?
Yeah.
And how do we undermine them? And I know I keep coming back to it. Their way of doing it is to delegitimize you.
That's right.
So we get people that hate the ATA all the time. That's fine. If I'm not making an enemy out of someone, it's probably because I'm not doing the right thing. Mm. But what shits me is I'm totally fine with someone disagreeing with our policy pieces. Yeah. I'm fine with someone saying, actually, I think that this policy is right and yours is incorrect. I'm fine with all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
What I don't like is these attempts of, well, all of the thousands of people that support the ATA, they don't exist. Hmm. And, the ATA is just a front for insert thing I don't like because it delegitimizes everyone that supports us.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the crux of the issue essentially, which is, and we were discussing this earlier. The ATA really has conducted itself pretty above board. We are openly a private organization. Mm-hmm. We advocate openly for everything, and we basically start to advocate about things that we care about, and hope that people who care about the same thing then will follow with their donations. And it's worked. Essentially, we're driven by the charitable giving of people who care about certain issues. And there's nothing wrong with that. Essentially, and I think everyone that would see that would know there's nothing wrong with it. Well, so they need to spin it.
There's something wrong with it if you're of the ideology that advocates for the government to be involved in every aspect of your life and for the government to be the arbiter of what you can do with your money and how, right? So if all of a sudden a group is coming out saying, actually, you don't need all these regulations. People should keep more of their own income and they should be able to do with it what they want. That undermines the argument you're making. So their response is to try and cut you down.
Right. And we've also taken absolutely no government money, as far as I know. Maybe you can correct me on that.
She actually misquoted me in my response. So one of the questions she asked was, what is the budget of the ATA? And I really, again, I'm not going to go and answer some random journalist just because she wants to, write was clearly a hit piece. So my response to her was, our budget is somewhere between heaps and a lot, but it's still significantly less than the various hobgoblins posing as advocacy groups and taxpayer, orgs, whilst being funded by the taxpayer.
Exactly.
So, the ATA is growing and we're doing pretty well, but we're still privately funded. So when we compare ourselves to all these other government-funded organizations. our budgets pale in comparison.
And they have an interest to keep taxes high.
Well, of course they do, because then there's more money to go around.
Well, not even that. When tax revenue goes down, and other institutions need to be funded, institutions that are actually core to the running of Australia, the first thing that's going to get cut...
The random little hobgoblins that are just tax leeches, their funding goes. So essentially you want to grow the tax pie, right? Because then there's more for you to dip into.
No kidding. And the big tragedy for me, I think, is that she didn't print hobgoblins.
Me too.
We were all hoping for it. I said a little prayer as I went to sleep. Please just let this woman print hobgoblins in the Sydney Morning Herald. That's all I want. She didn't, of course. No, but it is incredible. I really recommend to everyone who's listening to the podcast, go to the Sydney Morning Herald. Just search actually in Google. If you search the Australian Taxpayers Alliance and go to the news section, will be the first one there, with a handsome picture of our executive director.
It's a picture. I don't know if I'd use the word handsome.
Well, it's a handsome photograph overall, because you're wearing a stop shorten cap, and you have the text "taxation is theft" right next to you, which I found delightful, and they used it as the main image, which also brought joy to my heart. But essentially, I mean, the reason that we're coming here, this is kind of this is an exercise in us kind of sort of defending ourselves towards something that really doesn't even need defending against, because it's such a feckless accusation. But really what we want to emphasize is that the Australian Taxpayers Alliance has begun to make a difference. We're making a difference based on the donations of thousands of people across Australia that believe that liberty is actually something worth fighting for, and people who think that that's antithetical to their point of view are coming after us now. It's no longer just some little organization in the city. Now it's something that they have to contend with.
We're a big enough threat that groups linked to Get Up starting to try and push back against us, and the senior writer for a left-wing rag is trying to sniff around the edges. So what that tells me is we must be doing something right when the people that want to tax us all to death, when the people that want to take away, people's incomes, when the people that essentially want to insert government into your way of life are trying to undermine the groups you support and everything associated with that, well, we must be doing something right. So I used to really get annoyed when a journalist was starting to write some kind of trashy piece about the ATA. Now I kind of embrace it, because good. Clearly that tells me I've done something well.
Yeah. No, and the day that they start putting out some kind of brutal rebukes of our policy and the reasons why it wouldn't be fiscally viable, or the reasons why we would see a negative ramification.
I'm happy to play the ball, right?
We love constructive criticism. We love discussion. But my point is that might actually have some impact on us. But if you're just telling us that you're going to continue to throw spaghetti at the wall and say that we're funded by the Russians that helped get Trump elected and helped Brexit happen or whatever, it's just not going to work. Our funding is way too legitimate and way too above board for that ever to be a fruitful line of attack.
Tim's Russian.
Oh, right.
And he's put money into the organization. So therefore, we are funded by Russian.
Right.
Not Russians.
Russian.
But Russian, a singular Russian.
You also have ties to the Mexican government, I guess.
That's true. I mean, you're Mexican.
Yeah, so.
That's it.
And the Americans.
There you go, Deborah.
Essentially.
There's your next hit piece.
Mexican collusion.
The Australian Tequila Alliance.
Jesus.
God.
Oh, man.
That was awful. You know what? Can we just cut that out in post?
No.
Oh.
We can't.
It's there forever?
It is there forever, and not only that, but on that terribly low note, we're going to say goodbye to our listeners.
Oh, God.
But listen, it's been great. This has been a nice little car ride with you, Brian. And we really thank you for taking the time. Please, if you can, take the time to go read the hit piece, go to our website and learn a little bit more about what we're doing currently. And we'll see you next week.
Easy.
Thanks for listening to Adipod, a podcast by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. If you care to know more about the ATA, visit their website, www.taxpayers.org, where you'll be able to see their mission statement, their projects, campaigns, objectives, and so much more. Remember, listening to the podcast is free, but creating it isn't. If you'd like to continue to see the Australian Taxpayers Alliance advocacy, please consider becoming a member or donating. You can do this on their website as well. This has been Adipod. We'll see you next time.